Hi, I'm Rob Cram, and today we're taking a look at Crystal Dynamics' reboot of the Tomb Raider franchise, which we got to play several hours of at Square Enix's offices in London. Whilst we also played the multiplayer, for now we're focusing on the single player offering, which most people will be expecting. Lara Croft hasn't seen many changes over the years in the Tomb Raider franchise, except a distinct shift towards less taxing puzzles and a focus on action gameplay. Let's not forget that the very first game had a strong action element as well, as Lara dual-wielded her pistols and took down various animals and beings. Who could forget the massive T-Rex? Well, it seems gamers were getting bored of the whole tomb raiding element, and as with many franchises these days, developers Crystal Dynamics had to evolve the game to suit the current audiences. In doing so, one has to wonder how well the original games would fare in today's market. Rather than take that risk and produce a game exactly like the founding games, Crystal Dynamics have opted to revamp the game whilst maintaining an element of familiarity. We get to play as a younger Lara Croft, a less confident character, and one who we see develop her personality we've become accustomed to. The boobs are smaller and there's less pin-up and more gritty realism this time, as Lara and her crew of explorers are shipwrecked and then left to fend for themselves in some rogue-filled hell. Gamers will no doubt not need much introduction after the trailers and videos have provided enough details to set the stage. So the purpose of this video is to give you our thoughts on how it plays. In a nutshell, Tomb Raider isn't shit. In fact, it's rather excellently crafted, as it seems to share similarities with several other games, including Hitman, Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, and dare we suggest a bit of Uncharted. To begin, the game thrusts players into a heavily scripted environment, with the objective of making the player develop some empathy for the character. Whilst we witness a character at odds with other crew members via playback of video recordings at certain points, the main onus rests on the direction of the opening to suggest things have turned horribly sour due to Lara's decision making. Amongst the QTE button tapping and split-second reactionary presses, the direction leads players on a ragged journey of escape. A puzzle is thrown in early as a throwback to the series' roots, acting as a reminder that the puzzles are still here. It's good, and what's impressive is how the puzzle makes sense as players use fire to ignite objects to clear paths and progress through the dimly lit opening locale. There's little room for explanation to begin, but the tight and close quarters opening serves as a bold entry and a stark contrast to events that progressively reveal themselves as players get deeper into the game. There's a lot of hurt going on to begin, but this becomes secondary to the real threats as players move away from the scripted character building elements to more open-ended gameplay. Tomb Raider is very story driven and comes complete with a strong dictatorial narrative that blends itself with some fine action sequences. Once the initial escape is completed, Lara is up against the elements as she shivers in the cold and rests at a campfire, which double up as safe areas to level up skills, weapons and abilities. Once players arm themselves with the bow and arrow, they are able to hunt animals, which take place in more open areas. Although these aren't massive sprawling wildernesses a la Red Dead, they are more exploratory than the predefined tight interiors. There's even plenty of secrets to look for as well, for those wanting to fully explore each area. As the story progresses and Lara finds members of her crew, she's thrown into many scenarios, including the highly publicised molestation scene, which really is quite tame indeed. The introduction of wolves as enemies in the wild is expected, but the rogue humans are very much in the same ballpark as those seen in the recent Far Cry 3. Lara has to hit back, and through some cunning moments of stealth gameplay does provide some cool play options. You get to see Lara change from innocent to expert killer in the blink of an eye, which whilst not really making much sense, does highlight the seriousness of the situation she's in. Her choices are simple: man up and become the killer, or be captured and molested by the evil scum that inhabit the island. It's a little jarring, but in terms of gameplay feels right. The game really opens up once the tutorial-like moments are past and Lara finds more weapons than just the bow. The level design does feel somewhat gaming by numbers, where stealth routes look obvious, but so do the moments where players can shoot an explosive barrel for a multi-kill, or a light to set a hapless enemy on fire. What is good though is the choice players have to sneak, get up close and take down, or shoot from afar with the bow, and if you really don't give a shit, whip out the guns and go for some headshots. Enemies act with reasonable intelligence, opting to flush Lara out of cover or even rush her position. However, a melee upgrade does make taking out foes in close quarters very easy, on normal difficulty at least. The game then overwhelms Lara with numbers, where alerted enemies take elevated positions and shoot flamed arrows at her or shoot from various angles. Gunfights are tense and equally rewarding when machine gun exchanges take place. Lara can salvage items from fallen foes and use them to upgrade weapons at the campsites, adding another layer to proceedings. The main element of note is that the combat works, the aiming is tight, and Lara's ability to move from cover to cover feels natural. It works, as does the more methodical stealth element. We were only killed a couple of times, only once via combat and the other through a really poor jump. Whilst there is still an element of uncertainty, it seems the leaps of faith are kept to a minimum from what we've seen thus far. Crystal Dynamics haven't messed around too much with the standard movements of the character outside of the close-ups and scripted scenes. Lara still performs her signature climbing moves and can jump and grip just like she always has done. There are off the beaten tracks moments where Lara can explore, and even optional tomb areas can be ventured into for special items. What's probably the most notable change overall is how the story is presented and impacted with the gameplay during the scripted moments. They work, but offer little room for manoeuvre. As these are effectively interactive scenes, they cannot be skipped, which players might want to do on subsequent plays. So the gameplay is good and marries several styles into the one game, making this the broadest Tomb Raider game to date. Players are constantly encouraged to move forwards with a fairly swift pacing, which is good, although the open areas do provide moments of respite with their enclosed freedoms. Gameplay aside, Tomb Raider does look rather stunning, with Lara shifting with subtle and flamboyant animations that appear smooth and lifelike. The opening levels are a little moody, shrouded in darkness amidst bad weather and raging storms, but does look well polished, with a number of cool lighting effects used. The colour palette only opens up towards the end of the demo, when Lara climbs a radio tower to send out a distress signal, which also marks the moment where Lara fully becomes the tenacious Croft character we all know and love. It's a heady transformation and an excellent showcase of the opening of the game. Sure, the heavily scripted element and at times totally linear moments, the QTEs, aren't going to appeal to all players, especially old school fans, but there's the sense the game has moved on from its more solitary exploration roots to favour a more action-orientated experience. That said, we expect once the game opens its doors fully, the more open-ended gameplay will take centre stage. Tomb Raider so far is a fascinating excursion into the darker side of Lara Croft character, a game which is great to look at and even more fun to play. It's not shit and actually pretty top notch thus far, and as long as it's viewed as a new game with a familiar name, hopefully gamers will see this and find an engaging, strong narrative to sink their gaming time into when the game releases in March. Okay, I'm Rob Cram, thanks for watching.